So chances are you've heard that mindfulness can be beneficial for your mental health, but you might not know what mindfulness actually is. Unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions that mindfulness is always about focusing on your breathing, or you're not allowed to have any thoughts during a mindfulness exercise, which actually isn't true. So this video is to provide an overview of mindfulness and the skills that it involves, and I'll make some other videos with some brief mindfulness exercises that you can try at home. So in terms of what mindfulness is, it's all about being fully present in the moment that you're in. So rather than worrying about things that may or may not happen in the future, or going over and over things that actually you can't change in the past, it's about focusing on the present moment, and that tends to be a lot more effective for you and better for your mental health. So when we're focusing on the present moment, we want to do it with all of our awareness and attention, often using all 5 senses, and we want to do it without judgment. So you will notice your mind wander to thoughts about the past and future, and you will notice your mind wander to judgments or assumptions, and that's okay. That's what our minds do. It's a very normal thing to happen, and it doesn't mean that you're not that you're kind of failing at mindfulness or anything like that, so long as you manage to notice those thoughts and bring your attention back each time to the activity that you're doing. And you might find that your mind wanders 50 times during an exercise, and that's okay. Just notice your mind has wandered and gently bring your attention back to whatever it is that you're focusing on the present moment. And that thing that you're focusing on, it can be your breathing, but it also can be a whole range of other things. Any activity can be done mindfully. So you can be focusing on the emails that you're sending at work, or on going for a walk and what you can see around you, or on washing the dishes or playing with your kids. It can be anything really, so long as you are focusing your full attention on it and noticing each time your mind wanders and bringing it back. So for example, in this present moment, I am trying to mindfully focus on making this video, and I notice that my mind is wandering to thoughts about things that I need to do after this, checking the time. My mind is wandering to hearing my dog making noises downstairs, or wondering like whether the lighting's going to keep changing because there's clouds going past and things like that. And each time my mind wanders to that thing, I notice that my mind has wandered and gently bring my attention back to providing a full focus on this particular video. And it takes a lot of practice. You will find that some days your mind will wander loads and loads, and that's okay. Just bring your attention back each time. So in terms of the skills that mindfulness involves, so we have 3 main areas. So we have wise mind, the what skills, and the how skills. So we'll start with wise mind. Wise mind is a state of mind that includes both your emotion mind and your rational mind. So the emotion mind state is when you are driven by your emotions. You're very focused on emotions, you might be quite hot-headed, you might respond quite quickly and impulsively, you're more likely to be aware of your values and that sort of thing. And being in that state of mind can be really helpful in terms of it makes you more kind of compassionate at times, and more aware of living in line with your values, and at the same time it can cause problems because it means that you might respond too quickly to something without weighing up the facts or without thinking about the consequences, whereas our other state of mind, reasonable or rational mind, is where you're very focused on the facts and logic and problem solving, and quite cool-headed. And that state of mind is really beneficial in terms of when you need to problem solve or analyse something. At the same time, it has its downsides of maybe you seem quite cold to others or not as sort of compassionate to people and that sort of thing. So wise mind is the bit in the middle where it's kind of an overlap of those 2 states of mind. So when you're in wise mind, you are able to weigh up both your emotions and values and the logic and facts about the situation to hopefully make a very balanced decision. And people describe wise mind as being like their gut feeling or intuition. Some people talk about it being like a little voice at the back of the head that says, I don't think that's a good idea when you're about to do something. And initially it can be hard to notice your wise mind or to tune into it, but the more that you practice with mindfulness exercises, the more likely it is that actually you can bring wise mind forward when you need to think about things, and you can also notice when you're not in wise mind. So for example, some of our clients will say, oh yeah, I noticed I was emotion mind, so I decided to like walk away and you know, come back to that situation later, or I decided not to make any decisions because I knew I was in emotion mind. So that's the idea of wise mind. Don't worry if you don't get it straight away. It takes a while to get your head around what we mean, but it is something that can be really useful for you. The next skills are our what skills. So this is what you should be doing when you're practicing mindfulness. So there are 3 what skills: observing, describing and participating, and you're normally doing one of those at a time rather than all of them together. So with observing, it's about noticing things around you without needing to name them, label them, judge them, anything like that. So you might observe your breathing, you might observe kind of the rise and fall of your chest, the cool air coming in, the warm air going out, the movement of your abdomen. You might notice kind of the pace and rhythm of your breathing. And the idea is that you're noticing it without judging it or labelling it. And each time your mind wanders, just gently bring your attention back to observing. Sometimes you get people to practice switching between different senses. So it might get you to observe what things you can see, then what things you can hear, then what things you can touch, and then taste and smell, for example. Or we might get you to practice switching between observing something that's external and then observing something that's internal. So for example, going between you know, things you can see, hear and taste, to then things that you are thinking or emotions or your breathing and that sort of thing. And that's a really great skill because it means that during your day-to-day life, if there's something that you're finding distressing, like if you perhaps have pain in one part of your body, you can choose to switch your attention to focusing on something else when you need to. So the second what skill is the skill of describing, which involves putting words on your experience in a way that is factual and detailed and without assumptions or judgments. So we don't want to be saying things about someone's winding me up on purpose, because we don't know their intentions or their feelings or their thoughts. We can't observe that. So instead we can only observe their behaviour. We can mindfully describe that that person hasn't responded to our message, and that we're noticing that thoughts about them not caring or doing it on purpose. Another thing is trying to avoid sweeping generalisations or catastrophizing statements. For example, saying, everything's going wrong today, my whole day is ruined. Instead, we would try to mindfully describe what has actually happened. So, for example, I might mindfully describe that this camera died partway through recording the video previously, or my mum phoned through the second recording, or that the lighting kept changing and that sort of thing, and that I noticed thoughts about this keeps going wrong, you know, or thoughts about not being good enough, or emotions of frustration. That would be a much more mindful description rather than saying everything's going wrong and the whole day's ruined. And when you describe it mindfully, it helps you to sort of step back a bit and put the situation in perspective and think about what the actual facts are and separate them from your judgment. And when you think about the mindful description of an event, it's less likely to bring up really intense emotions compared to those sweeping statements about everything being ruined. So that's the second skill of mindfully describing, and the more that you practice it, the easier it gets. The third skill is participating. So this is about really throwing yourself into whatever activity it is that you're doing. So if you're in a Zoom call, instead of having your camera off and doing something else at the same time as the Zoom call, you would try to fully participate by having your camera on, listening to what's being discussed, joining in with the discussion, asking questions, taking notes, and that's likely to be far more effective for you rather than kind of half-heartedly listening. So those are our 3 what skills. We now have the 3 how skills, which means how you actually practice mindfulness. And these skills are things that you do the whole time that you're practicing mindfulness rather than focusing on one or the other. So the first one is non-judgmentally, which means that you are trying to avoid judgments about yourself or others or what it is that you're doing. Each time you notice those judgments come up, you just gently refocus your attention on what it is that you're doing. That also includes judgments about the mindfulness exercise itself. So a lot of people, they'll notice that their mind wanders and then they'll beat themselves up about it. They'll say, oh, like, I can't believe I'm thinking about that again, I'm doing a really bad job at mindfulness. When actually it's much more effective to just notice, oh, my mind's wandered again, and gently bring your attention back each time. So try to notice those judgmental thoughts and instead gently refocus on what it is that you're doing. The next house skill is one mindfully, which means that you're trying to focus all of your attention on one thing at a time. So if you're washing the dishes, you are just washing the dishes. You aren't listening to the radio and looking out the window at the same time. If you're playing with your child, you are just playing with your child. You haven't got your phone out at the same time, or the TV on, or talking to someone else at the same time. So trying to focus all your attention on one task at a time. And obviously we don't expect you to do this throughout your entire day, because there are many times when you do have to juggle lots of different things, but trying to set aside brief moments where you can do something mindfully and focus all of your attention on that thing. Our final house skill is effectively, which is about the idea of trying to do what is most effective in that moment. So you might notice urges to avoid dealing with things in a way that perhaps wouldn't be effective, and instead trying to do what is effective. And this kind of draws on the wise mind part, in terms of often you will have to use your wise mind to decide what is the most effective thing to do. So all of these skills, as I say, require a lot of practice. We recommend that people try and practice mindfulness every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. There are a load of different apps that you can use, like Headspace, for example, that guide you through particular exercises. There are also YouTube videos that will guide you through different exercises. I can make some as well. And it's something that you can try and build into your routine so it's easier to remember. So for example, a lot of our clients, we get them to initially practice mindfully brushing their teeth, because that's something that they do every single day for 2 or 3 minutes, and it's something that they can try and build into their routine rather than having to remember mindfulness as an entirely separate task. Do try lots of different forms of mindfulness. So people do, mindful colouring, mindful walking, focusing on their breathing, focusing on their senses, that sort of thing, and just see sort of what you find most helpful. Just bear in mind that mindfulness doesn't necessarily need to be relaxing. So a lot of people think that you're meant to feel calm after mindfulness, when that might not be the case. If you are mindfully focusing on something that is quite difficult, then the chances are you're not going to feel relaxed at the end of it. So don't feel like it hasn't been effective if you haven't felt relaxed afterwards. It's effective if you've managed to notice that your mind has wandered and you've brought your attention back. So I hope that's been helpful. There is obviously more information about this on the worksheets that are linked below as well.